Hello, and welcome to the Law Faculty's webinar for 2025. My name is Dr. Bradley Greenosh. I'm the Legal Education and Student Coordinator in the Office of the Dean here at the Faculty of Law at Stellenbosch. I am an alum of this faculty, and tonight we're going to be having a very open, informal, relaxed discussion about some of the topics that many of you might be wondering about. So welcome to you, potentially welcome to your parents or your guardians. And we've got some fantastic questions that we're going to work through over the course of the next half an hour. And sitting here with me is Mrs. Karen Viss, our faculty manager, and she's going to introduce herself and then take things away.
Good evening, prospective law students, parents, guardians. Welcome to the webinar. I think we don't have a lot of time, so let's kick it right off. I've got some information for you, specifically where you can find information. A lot of your questions related to admission requirements and how to prepare for your programs and what do the programs look like. So on the slide you see that marties.com is obviously the main web page that you will visit to do your applications, and then also the Faculty of Law's own web page, which is sun.ac.za/law. And then, very important, you will find a lot of all the program information, including module descriptions, in the faculty yearbook, which you can find under sun.ac.za/calendar. Now, this is typically what you can find in the yearbook. So here you see the first year of the 4-year LLB set out. So you can see your compulsory modules, you can see which modules you can choose as electives, and you have the same information for every year of study, as well as for every program that you could possibly be interested in. So all the information in the yearbook, please go visit that. Minimum admission requirements are also in the yearbook. So really a very handy source of information. In terms of the faculty programs, we of course have the 4 undergraduate programs, the 4-year LLB, then the unique BAC LLB, only university in this country that offers that program. It's a combined Bachelor of Accounting and Bachelor of Law. Then we have the Bachelor of Arts with a law major, so BA Law and BCom Law. The BA Law and the BCom Law give you direct access to the 2-year LLB program. So if you've studied at Stellenbosch, direct access to the 2-year program. And then, of course, we have a 3-year LLB for those that did any other degree but law, or that did maybe a BA Law or BCom Law at a different university and would like to join us after that. In terms of, so we had a lot of questions on selection and how do we select, when do we select. So this is quite important. We will only consider students that meet our minimum admission requirements for selection. So these are then your final grade 11 results that we would look at, or final grade 12 results if they are already available. We disregard life orientation in those results. And then we also look at the national benchmark test results for selection purposes. We do not consider non-academic merit. So if you've excelled in leadership or sport, that is not something we look at. We merely look at your academic merit. In terms of the national benchmark test, everybody that applies for law at Stellenbosch University, you have to write the benchmark test before the 31st of July. If you are interested in the LLB or the BA Law, you must write the academic and quantitative literacy. If you're interested in the BAC LLB or the BCom Law, you must write the academic and quantitative literacy as well as the maths test. Now, on that side, you will see the dates that are available before the 31st of July. So you will see that's a very limited number of dates. Those highlighted in yellow are actually online tests, so you can write the national benchmark test online. Those dates in green are Sunday tests. So if you are a sports person that is busy on every Saturday, there are 2 dates where you can write on a Sunday. In order to register for the national benchmark test, you go to that website that is listed there, nbt.ac.za, and you will register on that website. So I've had a question here that asked, what happens if I don't write the benchmark test? So quite important. Then we only consider your grade 11 or grade 12 results, but that only makes up 80% of your selection mark. So if you're, for example, a 90%er in your grade 11, that would mean your selection mark would be 72 because you did not write benchmark tests, so you got 0 for your benchmark test. So the consequences are quite harsh. If you had written the benchmark test and for argument's sake would have gotten a 60% for the benchmark test, your selection mark would have moved up to 84. So you can see a substantial difference. So it's really important that you go write the benchmark tests. Then we also had questions about, so I am a transferring student, I've started already at a different university, what can I do to apply, how will I be selected? We only have 25 places available for transferring students. You have to have met the minimum admission requirements for the program that you would like to transfer into, so those grade 12 results, but then we rank you according to university performance. So it's quite important that you do really well this year in your other degree or wherever you are currently studying law. So that is an important message there. In terms of our selection, so our selection process starts at the end of August, so we have to wait for the national benchmark test results to come through, and then we typically will inform students by the middle of September whether or not you are successful. So those are the dates. We typically receive quite a lot of applications. So for the 4-year LLB, for example, 14,000 applications for the 120 places that we have available. For the BA Law, BCom Law, we usually have about 3,000 applications, so not a lot of places available, so it's quite competitive. Again, I cannot stress enough how important those benchmark tests will be. And then what happens if you're not selected? So we do have a waiting list. We will give out those waiting list details typically in November to students that are interested in being on the waiting list. The waiting list typically is only considered in January once the final offers have gone out and once we have a sense of who of the previously provisionally selected students have arrived or will take up their offers. And then, of course, as mentioned, we also have transferring students, so we can look at those students as well. So if you didn't get in for law, you can then, of course, register for another program and apply for a transfer for the next year. So that's it very briefly on admission requirements, a little bit on selection. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Greenhalgh, who will talk a little bit about all the other questions that you had.
So thank you, Mrs. Wiss. Yeah, so we will certainly jump back to Mrs. Wiss with some of these. I just want to point out that in prior years, we had a WhatsApp line that was running, which was interesting because we received questions during the context of this live recording or show, and then we would try and deal with them. And this year, slightly differently, we've asked for your questions in advance. And this afternoon, shortly before we arrived here today, we received a whole bunch of new questions. So we are going to try and work through them. We did try and group them, but hopefully, as indicated, we'll answer all of them in due course. So if I was to start, maybe I'll just quickly add that my specific role within the Dean's Office over at the faculty is focused on the legal education side of things. So I play quite an active role within the teaching and learning environment. I report or work in cooperation with our Vice Dean of Teaching and Learning. And, we are accordingly very focused on the actual teaching aspects, what happens in our classrooms, in our smaller tutorial classrooms, and how are we monitoring and ensuring that all the classes that you will be exposed to during the course of your studies, that what needs to happen in those modules are in fact happening in those modules. And then along with that, I'm also responsible for the coordination of our students. So various interventions and programs and initiatives that focus along with broader central university initiatives that focus on student success, what we can try and do as a university to ensure that our students have the greatest likelihood or chance to live up to their academic potential. So that's just a little bit of background with regards to my specific position here within the faculty. And I would add that many of the other faculties at our university also have similar types of positions and persons in those faculties, although possibly not doing exactly the same amount of or the same type of work. It does vary slightly from faculty to faculty. But one of the questions that was posed here at the outset was, what does a law student look like? A fantastic question, a very broad and open-ended question. because I would surmise that there are many of you who are potentially watching tonight who are not entirely sure as to what does studying law entail. Who should I be? Are there certain characteristics that I as a student would benefit from having when I'm already at school? And it is a difficult question to answer, but I think there are certain core characteristics. Number one, when you come and study at Stellenbosch University, and specifically at the Faculty of Law, we do have a rigorous program. You work hard. We challenge you because we know what you are capable of. And so, we set high standards, but we set standards that we know that you can achieve and that we work along with you to ensure that it's possible to achieve those standards. So if you put in what you need to put in, you should be just fine in terms of what you're capable of doing here at the faculty. But it is a rigorous program, and you will know that you earned your degree. You will work hard and you will work consistently throughout the course of your program, so that when you leave here as a graduate, you will know that you have learned and acquired certain fundamental skills with regards to how you can practice further as a legal professional. But I just want to make the point, though, whilst approximately 60% of our graduates do enter the typical traditional legal fields, that's not necessarily the only options that are available to you. That other 40%, because of the skills that they have acquired whilst they have studied law, are able to move into very diverse areas and fields once they have graduated. But it does depend on you as an individual and what you are going to put in during your time here as a student, and what you are going to extract from all the opportunities that are going to be presented to you. So hard work, that's a given. The love for reading, and not just reading of non-fiction or fiction, but to critically engage with academic texts. Increasingly in this world that is moving more towards a digital space, one might argue that there's less and less where individuals are required to read dense amounts of information if they could rely on technology to do that for them. But you are going to be compelled, by virtue of being a law student, to develop key skills around processing lots of information and processing it quickly. And that is certainly something that is going to become an increasingly rare skill in our future, and something that you would be able to excel at and hold over many other programs at university. So yes, a love for reading, an inquisitive nature, someone who focuses on details, that understands that without knowing the particulars and the details of a particular scenario or situation, that much can turn on what appears to be a very small and individual point. So that focus to the nitty-gritty of what you are engaging with, that's also an incredibly important characteristic. And then lastly, I'm not sure if Mrs. Viss would like to add something to that, but grit. Your ability to acknowledge that you are going to be challenged, you are going to work hard. There are going to be times during your studies here that you're going to think, oh, it's a lot of work now, I've got to buckle down and do as well as I can. But if you have those elements, those characteristics of being persistent and acknowledging that you don't just want instant gratification, but you are going to chip away and put in the hours so that you can be yourself and get the most out of this journey here at the faculty towards your eventual graduation. Mrs. Viss, anything you would add on that point?
Yeah, I think, grit really goes down to how you're able to handle stress. So it's quite important that you are resilient, that you're able to handle a little bit of pressure, that you're able to handle stress, and that you can pick yourselves up when you perhaps maybe get results that you weren't that proud of. So we always talk about how the jump from school to university is quite a big jump. There's lots of adjustment that you need to make, and possibly for the first time in your life you might get a result that you are not necessarily proud of, and you have to be able to work through that and pick yourself up. So yeah, that's what I could add to that.
And those are incredibly valuable life lessons as well. And now, while you're at university, that is the opportunity for you to develop those skills. All of this then moving towards a degree that is a professional degree. So we are very focused on self-responsibility, accountability, and the professionalization of our graduates, so that wherever they may find themselves when they graduate, they are able to take on the rigors and the challenges of the world out there. Now, moving on, we've got a series of questions that were sent through. I believe this was by one individual. What are the key focus areas of the Faculty of Law? Can you tell us more about the curriculum and the course structure? Now, Mrs. Viss has already touched on certain elements of the curriculum, and I'll point again, if I hopefully don't make too much noise. This is the Law Faculty Yearbook. These are available online as PDFs. We've just downloaded them and bound them into a nice book. So please remember those websites that were shown to you. And also don't forget a very important resource, which are the various online open day websites and YouTube videos and the like, where you can also watch some of the earlier recordings that have been done at all the various different faculties, including the law faculty, which will also give you an overview and insight. But if I was to touch on elements around the program, I think one very important aspect that I just need to canvass, which has come up in many different questions, is what is the differences between these different programs? And right at the outset, I just want to emphasize what has already been implied. Regardless of which program you are enrolled in, you will all be doing, with an exception of one or two modules, all of the same law modules. So you are sitting in the same law module or the subject as all of the other programs. So a BCom law student, a BA law student, an LLB student, a 3-year postgrad student, a BAc LLB student, they might be at a different historical year depending on how their program is structured, but when they need to take criminal law 314 as an example, all of the other programs, when they are taking criminal law, are sitting in the same law module. So it's very important that you understand, depending on the different program that you might be interested in, the core aspects of the law are the same. It's the modules that go around it that are slightly different depending on whether or not you're doing something in conjunction with the commerce faculty, such as a BCom law or a BAc LLB, or something maybe with the arts faculty through something like a BA law. So that's the first point that I just want to make. And then another element that was asked in different ways is, when do I specialize? What if I'm interested in a career in, for instance, something like environmental law or human rights law or children's law? Well, what I would say to that is that at just about all of our law faculties at all of the various universities across South Africa, when you are completing an undergraduate degree in law, you don't really specialize. There are very few instances where that type of specialization might occur. In general, all of those different faculties are teaching the core modules of the LLB curriculum. They might offer them in slightly different years. At some faculties it might be a year module, at other faculties it might be a semester module. You might do something in your second year that elsewhere has been done in the third year or something, but the core key components of law, those modules are what you do at an undergraduate level. The specialization typically takes place at a postgraduate level. If you are doing something like a master's or later even a doctorate in law, that is when core aspects of specialization could take place. Now, I must quickly mention that you do get to choose certain what we call elective modules. So these are advanced and more focused modules, typically in your final year, but it could also be in your pre-final year. And that is also where a slight element of specialization takes place. So you might have done a general labor law course and you really enjoyed it, and so you pick an advanced labor law course as one of your options at a later stage. So there are elements of that, but by and large, specialization does not take place at an undergraduate level. So yes, so these different programs are maybe focusing on different elements, commerce, arts, and the like. But remember, what you do one day and where you are going to work is going to be completely contingent upon you as an individual and where your interests eventually lie. Similarly, we've been asked what kind of extracurricular activities or student organizations are available to our law students. Well, there are numerous societies that you can join if you were to come to Stellenbosch University, ranging from hiking societies to rowing societies, debating societies, There's a gaming society and all sorts of wonderful things. And then obviously within the Faculty of Law, we also have societies that are more focused on the interests of our law students. So we have a very active law student representative body, the so-called Juridical Society, the JVS, and they arrange all sorts of interesting activities that our law students are invited to participate in. And then we've got societies such as the Students for Law and Social Justice, which is a national society, or the Black Lawyers Association Stellenbosch chapter, or the Moot Society, or the Art Law Clinic Society. And these are all different societies that have a focus on elements around law that you can participate in and sign up for. And then we also have co-curriculum offerings such as leadership and law, and these different short courses that you can also participate in during your time as a student. Generally speaking, our students are incredibly active and fulfill very important leadership roles across campus. So yes, there are certainly plenty of opportunities to participate in those types of things when you arrive at Stellenbosch. And of course, for those of you who have managed to visit Stellenbosch or know Stellenbosch, we are still incredibly fortunate in that we are still a smallish town with an open campus, which means that by and large, yes, there are still petty crime issues, as with everywhere else in South Africa, but by and large, you can, during the course of the day, and when it's still the academic year and there's activity on campus, still until late in the evening, you can walk around and get to all different places on campus very easily and very safely. The overwhelming majority of our students travel by foot and move around by foot during their classes, and then in the late evenings they might use some of the e-hailing services and the like. But this means that you as a participant with all of these various societies and activities can get access to those very easily. All right, if I was to pivot slightly onto career options, so questions around what happens after law, and are there enough employment opportunities within the context of South Africa if I was to take law or enroll in law? Now, I've already indicated that, first of all, this is an incredibly personal and individual question. It depends on what you are going to put in and get out from your degree. But there are certain realities that we need to acknowledge. By last count, there are approximately between, depending on how you count things and which faculties and universities are looked at, anything from 4,500, 5,500 to 6,500 graduates, law graduates, that are being produced every year. And again, depending on how you count things within the profession and who you include in counting as a legal professional, approximately 26,000 advocates and attorneys that are operating within South Africa currently, that are officially registered under the auspices of the Legal Practice Council. So yes, the reality is that there are far more law graduates being produced than what arguably can be absorbed into the typical traditional legal fields. But we have also been tracking our graduates over the last couple of years, and what we have been able to ascertain from surveys that have been completed by our own graduates is that between 75 to 85% of our December graduates, so our students who graduate in December over the last 2 years, already had employment lined up for the purposes of what was going to commence the year after. And then of that remaining percentage, a not insignificant number of those students had in any event decided that they were going to study further at postgraduate studies. So there is, relatively speaking, quite a low number of graduates who do not yet know by December whether or not they have an employment opportunity lined up. And no doubt many of them would have managed to secure something at the start of the following year. So we are confident that given our program and given the rigors of our program, that we produce really good, strong academic students who are well versed in the theory and the knowledge of the law. And in most instances, employers out there do recognize that. But we cannot say with absolute certainty what every one of our new prospective students' employment opportunities will be. That will hinge on you as an individual, which I think is an understandable point to make. We're almost starting to wrap up, but I just quickly want to jump back to Mrs. Vischer, because one of the questions that we were asked was to provide a bit of information about the exchange program and what options are available for that. So Mrs. Vis, do you maybe want to touch on that?
I think this is a really exciting opportunity for students that are either in the 4-year LLB or that are doing the BCom law or BA law and then following that with the 2-year LLB. So in the final year of the LLB program, our students, and I think this is relatively unique to our university, can go on a semester exchange. So it's in the last semester of your final year of the LLB, where you will then spend that semester at one of our partner institutions. And by the time you will be in that position, it won't just be in Africa and Europe. We will also likely then have partners in Asia, in Australia, and in the USA. So what you will essentially do is you will, in that semester, instead of taking your electives at Stellenbosch, you will take law electives at one of those institutions. And they really include some excellent international institutions. So including on the continent currently, we've got Strathmore University, then we've got partners in the UK, and in Europe currently, and like I said, that will expand by the time you reach that year level. So a really wonderful opportunity for our students to grow as global legal practitioners. And then also, I think maybe adding to that, we also always get the question, so if I would want to practice elsewhere, or if I want to practice internationally, can I do that? And I think that's it's a challenging question, because the question will always be, where do you want to practice? So it is possible to practice law internationally. Typically, you would have to write a board exam or admission exam in some of those countries. So for example, if you wanted to practice as an attorney in the UK, so in the United Kingdom, you would have to write the admission examinations there. Of course, you would also have to have the requisite work visa, etc. Same goes for the United States. So there are 3 of the states where you could write the board exams to become admitted in those states. Some countries, of course, it is not possible because of their legal systems. So you would really have to go investigate, and where you would look at typically the Bar Association or the Legal Professional Council of that country, and you would find that information of how can a foreign attorney practice in that jurisdiction. That does not stop you, of course, from saying, but I want to work in that country maybe as a legal advisor. So not an admitted professional, but a legal advisor. So interesting opportunities all round. And then I think Dr. Greenhalgh already said this, in terms of your career, you shouldn't just look at becoming a legal professional. You can look really much wider to other careers in banking or in government, politics. I think it's quite vast what you can do with a law degree. So opportunities abound.
Thank you, Mrs. Vis. So we're going to start wrapping up now, and I just want to maybe touch on 2 final points. One of the questions that was raised, how does the Faculty of Law engage with the community or promote social justice? All of our final year students get to participate in what we call practical legal training, which means that you go and work at one of the, in teams at our legal clinic, our law clinic, the Stellenbosch Law Clinic, which is just across the road from the faculty, and you basically engage with actual clients during the course of your first semester or second semester in your final year. The Law Clinic has done amazing work across South Africa in terms of class actions, assisting indigent members of the community and really making a difference in that context. And then we have an increasing number of various chairs, which are special units within the faculty, focused on things from environmental law to financial regulation and corruption and all the various mechanisms around that, but also the social justice side of things. Our former public protector, Professor Thuli Madonsela, is very much at the center of one of those social justice units, as well as the Oppenheimer Human Rights Center. So you are going to be exposed to all of those elements, and it is at the core of what we focus on at our faculty. We have to produce not only excellent graduates who are very familiar with the technicalities of law, but we are incredibly mindful of their role within South Africa and the needs of South Africa and Africa from a socio-economic perspective as well. Being able to practice the law means that you can serve as a voice for the voiceless, and we need and certainly focus on making our students aware of those aspects as well. And then lastly, just to wrap up, is a question around what types of support are available to students when they arrive at the Faculty of Law at Stellenbosch. And the plain answer is there's plenty of support. But we do it at our faculty through the lens, again, of responsibility and self-accountability. There are various central support mechanisms that are available. We have a very active student representative society. We have class representatives. We have law mentors where you are allocated to senior mentors upon your arrival, senior law students upon your arrival. We have mentors within the residence space. You have my office, which assists students who might be struggling academically, and I can also serve as a conduit to refer you to other centers. So yes, well done in terms of making a decision to come and study here at our faculty. We hope to see you soon, probably next year, Mrs. Vis. Thank you for joining us.
Good luck for your final grade 12 exams. We hope they go absolutely wonderful, and we look forward to welcoming you to our campus next year.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.